A single mom's heartfelt plea on a napkin shocked a billionaire. What happened next will inspire. Sarah glanced at the clock on the wall of the diner, its incessant ticking seeming to mock her exhaustion. She wiped down the adjacent table, her movements mechanical as she stole glances towards her children, Tommy and Lily, playing in the corner with paper menus. They were innocent, carefree, the very essence of hope, a stark contrast to the weight of her reality. Each hour spent at the diner felt like a silent countdown to another day of barely making ends meet since her husband left, chasing dreams that didn't include her or their children. The air was thick with the smell of fried food and coffee, an unyielding reminder that dreams often come at a cost. She poured another cup of coffee for a regular, her hands shaking slightly, not from the caffeine but from the sheer burden of juggling 2 young lives on a waitress's salary. The bills piled up, her pride chipped away with every "sorry, we can't help you" from local charities. Today, she felt particularly vulnerable. After all, what was left of her? She used to dream of being someone extraordinary, a writer, a voice for the voiceless. Instead, she found herself penned in a booth of the diner, a participant in a life that revolved around the ringing of orders and the bustle of tireless customers. As the night dragged on, she found solace on a crinkled napkin, her fingers dancing over the rough texture, pouring out her thoughts like ink from a pen. I want more for my kids, opportunities one never had, a chance to chase their dreams. The words spilled across the paper, raw with longing and burdened by fears. In that moment, it felt like she was creating a lifeline for them, no matter how small. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. While she scribbled, her heart raced as the tears threatened to flow. The fear of failure materialized in her mind, her children growing up in this cycle of struggle without the chance to break free. She glanced around, noticing the customers laughing and eating, each soul buried in their own world. That's when he caught her eye, a man sitting alone in a dim booth, his gaze locked onto her words. She felt a rush of shame and anger. Did he see her as some charity case? Did he read her pain and find it entertaining? Jake leaned back, the napkin a weight in his hands, suffocating his world of privilege. Here was a woman fighting a battle he could only speculate about, her vulnerability stark against the backdrop of his life, filled with expectations and empty accolades. He couldn't shake the knot in his chest. Hadn't he been pursuing his father's empire for reasons he didn't truly understand? Watching Sarah, it felt hollow, like a portrait without color, lacking genuine connection. It was in that silence, under the weight of their own struggles, that they began to dance around the truth, the unspoken offer he knew would change everything for both of them. He contemplated speaking, a naive promise dangling in the air that could be a lifeline or a noose. Would his offering be seen as the chivalric act he intended, or a thunderous insult to her integrity? The rhythm of their lives collided, grace and anguish intertwined, both unaware of the profound impact their next words would hold. Their fates hung precariously, the table between them a fragile boundary that threatened to shatter with every hesitant thought. What did help truly mean if it stripped someone of their dignity? And as they remained locked in their silent battle, the significance of this night loomed large, ready to twist the course of their lives in unimaginable ways. With the ticking clock fading into background noise, Sarah felt the weight of Jake's gaze, the intensity of it igniting an uncomfortable flame in her chest. She wrestled with the thoughts spiraling inside her head. Could an invitation into his world be the answer to her prayers, or would it dismantle the fragile sense of self she had painstakingly built? The napkin lay there, her hope scrawled in ink, exposed and vulnerable just like she felt. Jake cleared his throat, and the sound resonated in the charged atmosphere. "I didn't mean to intrude," he offered, his voice steady yet laced with uncertainty. "What you wrote, it really resonates with me." Those words hung suspended in the air, and for a fleeting moment, Sarah considered offering a polite smile, retreating back to the safety of her routine. But something in her guts twisted. She had poured her heart out on that napkin, and perhaps, just perhaps, this could open a door. It's about wanting more, you know? For my kids. She suspected he didn't understand, not truly. Yet, as she spoke, a tinge of audacity seeped into her tone. I think everyone wants more. But wanting doesn't always mean getting it. Jake's brow furrowed. He leaned in closer, intrigued. I might be able to help you. The offer struck her like a lightning bolt, unexpected, confusing. It felt loaded with implications. He had a world of power at his fingertips, while she only had hopeful dreams. But what did help mean, anyway? Would she lose a piece of herself in the process? She was no stranger to assistance in forms disguised as charity. Her life had been littered with handouts that did little to empower her. How? She asked, attempting to keep her voice steady despite the quiver hiding beneath. With each passing moment, the cafe morphed into something more than a backdrop for her relentless routine. It became a crucible, urging her to forge an identity that married her aspirations with her reality. Jake hesitated, clearly processing her skepticism. I have connections that could help you get started with writing. Maybe an internship or mentorship. The words dripped from his lips like a soothing balm against her raw ambition. But would it relieve her or leave scars? Sarah's mind raced to her aspirations. She had toyed with the dream for years, scribbling stories that resonated with her soul, but could she trust him? Could he see beyond her faded apron and stained hands? What requires me to give in return? She forced the question out, fighting against the instinct to leap into the unknown. I just want to help. You have something to say. He leaned back as if the suggestion itself was perhaps a burden too heavy to carry. Something inside Sarah flickered, a notion long extinguished by self-doubt and despair. Was this the moment when she could claim her voice, staring down the precipice of her fears? As she weighed her options, the diner felt narrower, as if the walls were closing in on her. If she took his hand, could she truly navigate the world of someone like him without losing what made her essential? With a deep intake of breath, Sarah realized a decision loomed closer than she had anticipated, straddling the line between professional development and personal sacrifice. In this boiling point of uncertainty, her vision honed in on the fleeting chance: would she be courageous enough to explore the possibilities he offered, or would she pull back into the safety of the familiar? The encounter had peeled back layers, unveiling a new path. Sarah's heart thrummed with urgency. The future was no longer a set destination but an evolving journey. Tomorrow would thrust the weight of her choices into stark relief, leading her ever closer to a confrontation that would demand clarity: a choice between the comfort of her current existence and the unsettling potential for growth. And as the clock hummed on, Sarah braced herself for what lay ahead, knowing the time had come to confront her past and challenge the boundaries of her identity. In the back of her mind lingered another question, one unspoken yet ominous: could she forge a future without losing herself in the process? The sun peeked through the window as Sarah stared at the napkin, the ink still fresh yet already a relic of indecision. She sat on the edge of the booth, the warmth of the cafe's atmosphere standing in stark contrast to the ice-cold doubt swirling in her chest. What did it mean to accept help? And what would it cost her? Her reflection met her in the glass: disheveled hair, tired eyes. She could almost see the remnants of her dreams scattered around her, like burnt pages of a forgotten manuscript, ideas that had never been birthed beyond the confines of her mind. Yet here was Jake, pulling her back into the conversation, his confidence piercing the veil of her hesitation. Sarah? He spoke her name gently, pulling her from the depths of her thoughts. I believe in what you can create. I see potential in you, and I can help you express it. His sincerity rocked her foundation. No one had ever seen beyond the surface, recognized the potential that swirled within her beneath the mundane layers of her day-to-day life. But sincerity was a two-edged sword. It cut deep, exposing a vulnerability she was unprepared to confront. Would accepting his offer emphatically affirm her worth as a writer or shatter her fragile self-image into 1,000 pieces? Can I really do this? She whispered, the insecurity chasing her like a shadow. Jake's brow furrowed as he leaned in closer. You can. It's about believing in yourself as much as I believe in you. You're already a storyteller, you just need a platform. The pitcher of coffee sat neglected, growing cold while her thoughts raced. The idea of mentorship blasted through her defenses. Would it also come with expectations that could swallow her alive? Could she amalgamate his world with her own without drowning in the vastness of it? A cricket's chirp outside broke the momentary silence, grounding her in the present. Opportunity danced before her, but the fear of entitlement gripped her heart. She had not earned a place in Jake's universe, it had been precariously bestowed upon her, and that made the allure dangerous. What if I fail? She asked, her voice a whisper now, barely lifting above the murmurs of other patrons. Then at least you tried, he replied, unfazed. But if you never take the leap, you'll always wonder what could have been. The challenge in his tone both emboldened and frightened her. Suddenly, the memories of her past failures surged a tangled web of doubt that tautened with every breath. Yet, like nets fraying at the edges, they were fading. The weight of her children's hopes pressed down on her. Still, did she want to be the mom who merely blended into the background, or the one who broke the mold and pursued her dreams regardless of societal standards? Okay, she exhaled, feeling a rush of adrenaline. Let us do it. Jake's smile illuminated the space. At that moment, she made a promise not just to him, but also to herself. No more excuses. No more apologies for her desires or aspirations. Every story she penned would carry the mark of her being. In the days that followed, Sarah's trajectory swerved. Networking became her newfound ally, conversations with people she never imagined would be accessible energized her, and for the first time in years, she felt alive in ways that transcended her role as a single mom. Writing transformed from a dream into a looming reality as her words flowed with renewed purpose. Yet, with each accomplishment, a counterbalance emerged, her insecurities revived. Was she worthy of this world? Was it only a matter of time before it would all come crashing down? The balance of her identity trembled as she stood on the precipice of two worlds, the one where she had lived in steadfast routine, and the one brimming with potential but ruefully uncertain paths. As she scribbled down ideas, she created a bridge between her aspirations and her fears. The question pulsed within her like a heartbeat: how much of herself would she be willing to trade to ensure that she never returned to the life of quiet desperation? And as Sarah embarked on this journey, something larger loomed on the horizon, preparing to test her resolve and clarity of purpose. The time would soon come for her to confront the truth behind her path and the sacrifices it would demand. But the real question was she prepared to face the repercussions of aspirations that could redefine her entirely? It was a crisp morning when Sarah stepped outside, her breath visible in the chill as she clutched her notebook close. The streets were alive with a hum of activity, shadows dancing along the sidewalks as commuters hurried past, each one wrapped in their own narrative. Today, however, she was determined to write a new chapter in hers. Jake had urged her to attend a local writers' meetup, a gathering that seemed to be teeming with potential connections and creative sparks. The thought of it caused her stomach to churn nervously. Would they see her as a fraud, an outsider stepping into a room full of polished storytellers? The ringing of her phone startled her back to the moment. It was Jake, checking in. "I'll be there. Don't overthink it, Sarah," his voice soothed her looming doubts. "Breathe, be present, and just share. Your voice matters." After hanging up, she felt a swell of determination countering her anxieties. She could share her voice. After all, her experiences, her struggles, her hopes were the essence of her storytelling. She just needed to embrace the fear of judgment. As she approached the venue, the vibration of her pulse quickened. A cozy bookstore nestled between hip cafes greeted her, warm light spilling through inviting windows. Inside, mingled sounds of laughter and conversation wrapped around her like a comforting blanket. Entering the room felt like stepping into a dream or maybe a movie scene, the type where the protagonist feels lost yet finds purpose among strangers. She spotted a group huddled in the corner, passionately discussing character development. Part of her yearned to run away, hide, while the other, stronger part, insisted on stepping forward. Taking a deep breath, she approached them. "Hi, I'm Sarah," she said, surprised by the steadiness in her voice. Introducing herself felt like shedding layers of insecurity, revealing a more authentic version of who she was. The group welcomed her with open arms, their enthusiasm contagious. Throughout the afternoon, they shared stories, critiques, and laughter. Sarah found herself opening up about her own aspirations, the weight of her dreams spilling into the air like ink on clean pages. Each nod and encouraging word felt like threads weaving her into the fabric of this community, a feeling she had longed for but was terrified to embrace. Yet, as the conversations deepened, she couldn't shake the specter of self-doubt. Was she just riding the coattails of their talent? The notion clung to her like a stubborn shadow, whispering that this was merely a temporary facade, another illusion that would soon shatter. But as she shared her struggles with the group's feedback, something unexpected happened. Their appreciation ignited a glowing ember of confidence. "Your perspective is unique," one of the writers remarked. "We need more voices like yours to challenge the narrative." Those words reverberated within her, prompting her to confront her insecurities head-on. Leaving the meetup, she walked taller, propelled by a newfound understanding, worth isn't about titles or accolades but the courage to share one's truth. Each moment spent in that bookstore had strengthened her resolve, grounding her budding identity as a writer. That evening, with her notebook perched on her lap, Sarah began to draft a new piece, a story about vulnerability and resilience, one that delved into the heart of what it meant to be a single mom reaching for her dreams. Each word felt like a direct threat to her earlier doubts. They danced across the pages, challenging everything that had previously held her hostage. But, just as she basked in the triumph of her realization, an unsettling thought crept in. The community she had basked in today would inevitably have expectations of her. Would she be able to sustain the progress she had made? The question roiled within her. She couldn't ignore the weight it carried. Balancing her role as a mother and her ambitions was a delicate dance, and the thought of failing them both felt paralyzing. As the ink still dried on the page, Sarah knew the next step required more than just words, it needed action. With every story she wrote, there was a persistent question simmering beneath the surface: was she ready to chase her dreams without losing herself in the process? Would she summon the courage to confront obstacles from her past that still loomed large? Just beyond her reach, opportunity beckoned once more, waiting to see how far she was willing to stretch, to learn, and to grow. The path ahead was beginning to unfold, yet the darkness behind her loomed ever closer. Would she turn and face it, or allow the past to haunt her anew? Determination surged within her as she dove deeper into her story, but the looming specter of her fears threatened to drown her newfound confidence. The time would soon come when she would have to decide how far she could truly go. The next morning, Sarah awoke with a mixture of resolve and anxiety swirling in her chest. Her notebook lay next to her bed like a silent promise, urging her to continue the story birthed from last night's revelations. She could almost hear the pages whispering, each blank one called to her, inviting her to fill it with her voice. After preparing breakfast for her son, Eli, she settled into a sun-drenched corner of the living room. The aroma of coffee swirled around her like a much-needed shield against doubt. It was a sanctuary of sorts, a space where she could negate the external chaos and focus solely on the internal dialogue that had churned within her since joining the writers' group. Sarah opened her notebook and stared at the blank page before her. This was not merely an exercise in creativity but a vital confrontation with her insecurities. She needed to articulate her fears if she ever hoped to break free from their grip. With each stroke of the pen, she forced herself to confront the harsh truth that had shadowed her: she had always allowed fear to dictate her narrative. But now, armed with the encouragement of her new community, she resolved to write differently. Determining to be honest, she began to articulate the struggles of balancing motherhood with her ambition. However, halfway through that first draft, reports of an upcoming competition for writers were broadcasted through her thoughts like a breaking news alert. The contest was open to all, promising not only recognition but also a chance for financial backing. A tingle of excitement collided with a wave of doubt. What if her work wasn't good enough? What if the judges were unimpressed? Gripping the pen tighter, Sarah forced herself to breathe. This was her chance to put herself out into the world, to see what happened when she ceased to let fear dictate her path. She considered what the members of the writing group had said: "Your perspective is unique." Was it a risk to submit? Absolutely. But was it a risk worth taking? Yes, she concluded. But first, she needed to be fully committed to her craft. Refocusing on her story, Sarah penned furiously. Words spilled out, capturing the tug-of-war between her desires and the relentless pull of self-doubt. Page after page, she crafted scenes that resonated with her truth-sharing moments of vulnerability, failure, and the unwavering will to rise again. Yet, as she tore through limiting mindsets, another internal conflict brewed. The looming competition felt like a double-edged sword. Could she bear rejection? What if the opinions of others crushed the delicate progress she'd begun to make? Intimidation clawed at her as she considered the potential for failure. Thinking back to the warmth and encouragement of the Writers' group, she realized that their support might still be available beyond the walls of that bookstore. She could reach out, seek their insights, maybe even create alliances. This wasn't just an opportunity for individual recognition but a chance to connect with like-minded individuals to learn and grow even further. With renewed purpose, Sarah began drafting an email to the group. She could share her anxiety surrounding the competition and request feedback on her piece. Taking this step felt monumental. It was a tangible action, rather than merely an introspective struggle. Putting herself forward for critique would mean exposing her vulnerability again, but perhaps that exposure was necessary for growth. She pressed send, the light plink of the email leaving her inbox echoing in her ears. Her heart raced. It was done. She had engaged with her community, sought support, and now all that remained was to await their responses. It felt like a gamble, testing her readiness to confront failure while also completely accepting the possibility of support. Just as a sense of relief washed over her, a familiar face crossed her mind. Jake. A small part of her wished he could be her unwavering cheerleader throughout this journey. Maybe she needed someone to lean on, to remind her of the journey ahead and the importance of taking risks. As she lay against her soft couch, she mulled over this realization. It would be vital to establish a support network beyond just the writers. Perhaps she could reach out to him to talk, to strategize, pushing her further toward the professionalism she desired. The sun streamed through the window, illuminating the words she had written and the new, albeit fragile, determination that forged them. But it hadn't fully settled in yet. Would conversations with Jake stoke her momentum, or would they distract her from her path? She felt the weight of her choices heavy on her shoulders. As doubts flickered in her mind, Sarah knew there was something more significant at stake than mere words on a page. The story of a mother striving for her dreams was worth drawing out, but who she would become in the process remained to be seen. Would she have the courage to truly embrace the change that was calling her name? Determined to carve her path amid the uncertainties, she took a deep breath, and with a fire ignited in her chest, she grabbed her pen once more, not just to write a story, but to reclaim her identity. The future loomed, blank and uncharted, ready for her to seize it. But then the ping of an incoming message snapped her from her reflection. Who was reaching out to her on this momentous day? The message glowed on her phone's screen, a small blue notification that pulled Sarah from her introspection. It was a response from the writers' group. Her stomach flipped in knots as she clicked it open. Did they appreciate her courage? Would they validate her emerging voice, or tighten the noose of her insecurities? Hi Sarah. I just read your email and I wanted to reach out personally. I think you're on a great path, and I'd love to take a look at what you've written. Let us get together and chat over coffee next week. You've got this." The words were a balm soothing her frayed edges. A flood of gratitude washed over her, but alongside it lingered a gnawing doubt. What if they had only offered kindness to spare her feelings? She quickly shook the notion away, reminding herself that everyone in the group shared a similar vulnerability. Words held power, and she now wanted to embrace hers. Refreshed yet still anxious, Sarah left the confines of her living room. Outside, the sun held court in a flawless blue sky, beckoning her to bask in its light. Walking helped organize her thoughts and her expectations. This weekend, she needed to produce something concrete, something she could present to her writing group and feel proud of. With every step, her confidence burgeoned, yet beneath the surface, the silence screamed doubts louder than the chirps of birds overhead. What if her honesty was met with criticism? Embarrassment sank in her chest like an anchor. Still, she reminded herself that vulnerability fueled connection. At home, she wasted no time. She cleared the kitchen table, transforming it into a workspace filled with pages-old drafts, new ideas mingling with brimming ambition. The ticking clock loomed, a reminder of deadlines, but instead of panic, it steered her focus. The competition had ignited a fire within her that demanded expression. Each scene she crafted blossomed from her experiences, intertwining joy and heartbreak, fear and fierce determination. Writing didn't just become a refuge, it transformed into a battleground where she grappled with who she was and who she was becoming. The words on the page became testimonies, narratives amplified by her honest portrayal of motherly struggle intertwined with aspirations. Yet every flourish of creativity also prodded at her insecurities. That afternoon, taking a break, she found her thoughts drifting to Jake again. His voice haunted her, always encouraging and endearing. He was rooted in her past yet loomed indistinctly in her present journey. Would reconnecting serve as a distraction, or could his support forge her resolve? Torn between fear of venturing further into her new life without him and the necessity of personal growth, Sarah found herself staring at the screen of her phone. Reaching out to Jake felt like facing an unresolved chapter in her own story, waiting for the right words to make sense of it all. Was she truly ready for that conversation? With a deep breath, she decided it was time to pick up the phone, to extend an olive branch as fragile as it was purposeful. "Hey Jake, can we talk?" She typed, her heart hammering against her ribs. A moment of hesitation passed, then she hit send. As the sun dipped behind the horizon, she felt a flicker of hope kindled by the threads of her choices, love, and fear, all charting an unexpected course toward self-discovery. But with the decision to reach out to Jake looming ahead, she could sense another fork in her path arising. Suddenly, her phone buzzed again, this time signaling another message. A reply, this one unexpected, its implications impossible to unravel in a single moment. The anticipation gripped her like a wave, carrying the promise of revelation or complications she couldn't foresee. What new venture awaited her now, concealed within that blink of an eye? The message from Jake lit up her screen, a stark contrast to the soft glow of the fading day. The simple text, "I'd love to," resonated far beyond its 6 words. Relief washed over Sarah, but it was tinged with the reality that she had invited a conversation laden with complexity into her life. Hesitant yet resolute, she recognized this was not just about rekindling a connection, it was also a step deeper into her own narrative. The following days were rich with tension as she prepared for both her meeting with Jake and her writers' group. She carefully constructed her thoughts, framing her experiences with a clarity she longed to achieve. Like an artist mixing pigments, she blended truths, emotions, and the lessons gained through her struggles. But the shadows of self-doubt loomed. What if Jake found her unworthy of his time? Would the vulnerability she planned to display be met with judgment? As she sat at her kitchen table, surrounded by her notebooks, freshly brewed coffee steaming beside her, she poured her heart into her writing. Each line, each sentence carved from the depths of her soul, reflected not just who she had been as a mother but who she was becoming in her artistry. She felt her words pulse with vigor, her past shaping the contours of her prose. Yet, just when she tasted the sweet triumph of creative freedom, anxiety crept back in. Was it enough? The night before the meeting with the writers' group, Sarah struggled to rest, her mind racing with what lay ahead. She practiced her pitch in the mirror, her reflection staring back as if more attuned to her fears than her aspirations. The self-assured woman she hoped to become stood just within reach, but those all too familiar insecurities held her back like iron chains. What did they see in her? Finally, morning broke with a burst of golden light, stirring her from restless dreams. Today was pivotal. Meeting Jake would open a doorway back to a shared past, while the writers' group could either solidify her confidence or unravel it entirely. Stepping into the world felt like walking onto a stage, the spotlight shining bright but blinding at the same time. As she prepped for coffee with Jake, a rising excitement bubbled alongside her fears. Would he see the changes in her? Would he recognize her quest for growth? The back and forth of these thoughts wove a complex web of hope and hesitation. The cafe buzzed with chatter, an energetic hum that both delighted and unnerved her. As she settled into the bright atmosphere, she positioned herself at a table for two, her heart thrumming against her chest. Moments later, Jake entered, and she felt her breath catch. There he was, the embodiment of nostalgia and potential candor, looking out at her with the same warmth she remembered. "Sarah," he said, a smile spreading across his face. "It's great to see you." Their brief but genuine embrace reinforced the truth of their intertwined histories. As they settled into conversation, sharing laughs and reminiscing, she began to unfurl her thoughts. The jagged edges of her stories smoothed out as they connected experiences, breaking down barriers that had felt insurmountable for so long. But as vulnerability emerged, Sarah faced the choice: should she tell him about her writing? Would he support this new facet of her life? With each sip of coffee, an internal battle raged on, the stakes rising dramatically. The truth was unfolding, not just in the words spoken but in the choices and risks that accompanied them. The potential for judgment lay heavily in the air. Either she would present an authentic glimpse of her burgeoning dreams, or retreat into the safe confines of years past. As she prepared to vocalize her ambitions, her heart raced with both fear and newfound determination. Just as she opened her mouth to speak, her phone buzzed in her pocket, a message from her writing group, a reminder of the parallel path awaiting her. The moment felt charged with a gravity she hadn't anticipated. What lay ahead could redefine her understanding of herself, propelling her toward an unfamiliar, yet exhilarating future. Fully aware of the challenges that awaited her, Sarah steeled herself, knowing it was finally time to find her voice no matter the outcome. But as Jake leaned closer, his gaze intent and questioning, uncertainty fluttered in her chest like a caged bird. Would he truly accept the new direction her life had taken, or would she unravel the thread of their connection? What if revealing her truth meant confronting his own? The unfolding narrative shimmered with promise, as the cascade of choices awaited just around the corner, waiting to be acknowledged. Sarah took a steadying breath, her resolve hardening as she looked into Jake's expectant eyes. The cafe burst with murmurs and laughter, yet in this moment, the world narrowed to just the two of them. She could almost feel the weight of her unspoken dreams pressing against her chest, a weight she could no longer afford to carry alone. With a calmness that surprised her, she blurted out, "I've been writing." The words flowed out, wild and unrestrained, tearing through the barrier of self-doubt she'd fortified for years. "Like, really writing? I'm working on something that matters to me." Jake's expression shifted from curiosity to genuine interest. He leaned in, encouraging her with the warmth that had always made her feel safe. "That's great, Sarah. What kind of stuff are you writing?" Her heart raced, thrill mixing with trepidation. She felt a sudden burst of courage, not just to talk about her writing but to share pieces of herself she had kept hidden. "It's a collection of stories, memories from being a mom, reflections on life, things I've learned while trying to find myself again." As she spoke, Sarah noticed Jake's gaze sharpen, his brow furrowing with consideration. He didn't seem quick to judge, instead, he considered her words as if they were pearls emerging from the depths of her heart. "That sounds powerful," he said, nodding slowly. "Have you shared it with anyone yet?" There it was, the daunting question that sent chills spiraling down her spine. Her bravado ebbed slightly. "I'm in a writing group. It's been a bit intimidating, to be honest." She hesitated, gauging his response. "What if they think it's just not good enough?" Jake's laugh was light but edged with a seriousness she hadn't expected. "Okay, first, you've never been anything but good enough. And second, writing is such a personal journey. What is good enough anyway?" He paused, his silvery eyes searching for hers. "Don't let the fear of judgment overshadow your voice." Something within Sarah peeled back defensively at his words. She felt a glimmer of validation that sparked a deeper yearning. Perhaps he was right. Her journey wasn't about meeting societal expectations but about expressing her truth and harnessing the healing power of her voice. She wanted to pursue this path with vigor, rather than shackling it to the opinions of others. As the conversation unfolded, she unveiled her struggles, her joys, even her apprehensions about being a single mother embarking on a creative pursuit. Each word molded from a clay of past hurts and resilient aspirations. Jake listened intently, nodding in understanding, never dismissive. Yet doubt still danced at the edges of her newfound courage. "But what if it leads me nowhere?" she questioned, a lingering fear that clung like fog in her mind. "What if I fail?" Jake's smile softened, his voice steady. "If you never try, you've already failed. Sure, there will be roadblocks, but that's where you grow. Embrace it. Write your story, Sarah." In that moment, a light flickered within her, a flicker that battled against the shadows of fear and uncertainty. Maybe just by sharing her dreams, she was already beginning to understand the depths of her own resolve. The conversation transformed from warm nostalgia to an unexpected awakening, igniting a passion she had buried too long. As they discussed memoirs and the craft of storytelling, she felt her insecurities begin to dissipate, albeit gradually. But along with this shift came another realization: she had to confront her fears in her writing group too. Sparking a creative revival with Jake had lit a fire, she needed to harness that momentum. When it was time to move on, as they stepped out of the cafe, reason and doubt began to coalesce. "I should go," Jake said, glancing at his watch, "but I'd love to read something you write. You have my email." "Yes," she replied, an exhilarating rush sweeping over her. "I will." As she parted ways with Jake, anticipation surged through her veins, a mix of dread and determination mingling. The upcoming meeting with her writing group loomed large in her mind, a crucible where insecurities would either be tempered into strength or left to erode her newfound confidence. Just as she turned the corner, an unexpected thought struck her: what if sharing her work could forge connections beyond her imagination? What if one bold moment could redefine not only her narrative but the stories of others she had yet to meet? The possibilities spiraled in her mind as she set her sights on the future ahead. But as splendid images danced in her consciousness, another wave of doubt imposed itself. What if her words abandoned her when she needed them most? Perhaps this was the moment to embrace not just her fears, but also the strength she had discovered since meeting Jake. No longer solely the single mother defined by her past, she was Sarah, the writer on a precipice ready to leap into an unknown adventure. And as she approached her apartment, the galaxy of her ambitions twinkled overhead, but one question anchored itself in her mind: was she truly prepared to face the critics, both inside and out? That thought echoed, urging her forward into a night shrouded in possibilities. As Sarah stepped into her dimly lit apartment, the familiar chaos greeted her: discarded toys scattered across the living room, dishes high in the sink, and the distant sound of her daughter humming a tune as she played in her bedroom. This was home, a sanctuary filled with both joy and responsibility. But today, it felt like a stage set for something larger. With each creak of the floorboards beneath her feet, she felt the weight of her decision settling. Tonight, she would attend her writing group, and facing her peers felt as daunting as stepping onto a stage under the spotlight. She could almost hear the whispers of her insecurities echoing around her. The stories she had nurtured in the silence of her mind would soon be up for scrutiny, exposed for all their beauty and flaws. As she busied herself with clearing a space on the coffee table, her thoughts whirled. What if the group didn't connect with her experiences? What if the vivid emotions she had poured into her writing fell flat? Yet, amidst these doubts, another, more defiant voice surfaced, a voice that insisted on claiming her space, her truth. The thrill of self-expression ignited a warmth in her, urging her to recognize that there was freedom in vulnerability. After a quick dinner and a few rounds of reminders for her daughter about bedtime, Sarah slipped into her favorite pair of jeans, the ones that felt comfortable yet empowered. She combed her fingers through her hair, trying to summon confidence from within. Tonight wasn't just about sharing her stories, it was about making strides toward unearthing the more authentic version of herself. Driving to the cafe, she reflected on Jake's words. Don't let the fear of judgment overshadow your voice. What kind of betrayal would it be to her dreams if she allowed hesitation to overwhelm her? As she parked, she took a deep breath, letting the bite of night air clear some of the fog from her mind. She entered the cafe, the fragrance of coffee mingling with the ambient chatter of fellow writers and dreamers. Familiar faces greeted her, some friendly, others focused intently on their notes. Sarah felt the familiar flutter of anxiety return, but this time, it was intertwined with apprehension and excitement. Finding a seat at the long wooden table, she took a moment to observe the group engaged in discussions, sharing laughs and snippets of their lives. She tucked her notebook close to her chest as she listened, aware that memories both tender and painful lingered between the lines of her collection. Each writer seemed to possess an undeniable spark, and she wondered if they experienced the same fears that haunted her. When it was her turn to read, her hands trembled slightly as she flipped to the first page. This is a story about my journey as a mother, and how I've found strength through vulnerability. She glanced around, their faces expectant yet encouraging. Silence enveloped the table, replacing the preconceived notions of judgment with a space for connection. As she read, the words took on a life of their own, resonating with shared experiences around motherhood, loss, and self-discovery. They captured not just her fears but also the rawness of her emotions, carving a path for empathy to flow. For every stutter and pause, she visualized the birth of something more expansive than she could have imagined, a bridge between her soul and theirs. When she finished, the cafe erupted into applause, and rather than the anticipated critique, sincere praises flooded her. Her achievement, once a labyrinth of insecurities, unraveled into newfound validation and a recognition of her voice's worth. She had taken the leap, and the thrill of acceptance surged through her. As the group shared their thoughts, Sarah allowed herself to bask in the warmth of their enthusiasm. It was more than just feedback, it was a corrosive tool against her self-judgment, a signal that her writing held value beyond her solitary walls. Each affirmation chipped away at the fortress of doubt, revealing glimpses of resilience she hadn't known existed. Yet as the night wore on, a small, insistent voice nagged at her. Had she truly revealed herself, or had she merely scratched the surface? There were deeper stories, more healed wounds she could explore, but were they ready to emerge into the light? As she stepped back into the chilly night air, a thrum of exhilaration pulsed through her veins. She recognized that the writing journey promised more than just a collection of stories, it was an invitation to excavate hidden corners of her soul. But could she summon the courage to delve deeper, to unearth the experiences that scared her the most? In the silence of that night, as streetlights flickered overhead, a refreshing thought settled within her: her journey was only just beginning. The real question now loomed ahead like an unopened door. Was she ready to step beyond the threshold of comfort and into the deeper waters of her creativity? As dawn broke, Sarah stood before her window, the morning light spilling into her apartment, illuminating the remnants of last night's exhilaration. She felt different, transformed. It was as if the darkness that once clung to her was gradually dissipating, revealing a determined spirit ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. Last night, she had stepped onto the stage of vulnerability, and not only had she survived, she had thrived. Her writing group had met her authenticity with open arms, encouraging her to dig deeper into her narrative, and she would. No longer would her fears dictate her story. Today would mark a turning point, a commitment to pursue every unfolding layer of her experiences as a single mother and storyteller. The harsh whisper of self-doubt began to erode in the face of newfound confidence. With her notebook in hand, she settled at the small kitchen table, ready to explore the emotions that had long been buried. Fueled by the memory of their encouragement, she began to write with fervor. Each stroke bore witness to the qualitatively rich moments of joy and struggle, solidifying the connections that bound her to her children and her dreams. Her words flowed more freely now, taking on a life of their own as they shaped into stories worth sharing. As the days turned into weeks, Sarah nurtured her craft, weaving intricate narratives from her life experiences. The stories expanded, becoming a tapestry reflecting frailty and strength, wearing proudly the scars of resilience. Each chapter completed served as a reminder of her purpose and potential. Recognition soon followed, as her confidence flourished in the light of her hard work. She received invitations to speak at local literary gatherings, an opportunity to share not only her work but her journey. Each event she attended felt like a validation of her efforts, a testimony that the stories she thought would remain unspoken had begun to resonate. The apex of her transformation came when one day, out of the blue, an email landed in her inbox, a publisher interested in her work. The proposal merged her personal essays into a compelling collection that mirrored her journey as a mother in pursuit of her writing dreams. Jake's voice echoed in her mind, coaxing her on, "Embrace it." This was no fleeting opportunity, it was recognition that her voice mattered. As she clicked "Reply" to accept the proposal with both pride and disbelief enveloping her, exhilaration pulsed through her veins. Each word typed was a testament to the journey she had embarked upon, an affirmation that she had carved out her place in the world of storytelling. In the aftermath of this realization, she reached out to her writing group, a family forged in shared dreams and vulnerabilities. Their congratulations and excitement fueled her enthusiasm, and they rallied around her, providing a supportive network as the project unfolded. Meetings became a cadence to celebrate successes while also collectively confronting the doubts that would occasionally resurface. She had built a life around her ambitions, and she loved it. But Sarah's personal metamorphosis didn't stop there. With each accomplishment in writing, she learned to let go of the guilt that often haunted her as a mother, guilt about not dedicating enough time to her kids while pursuing her own ambitions. She learned to weave her experiences into bedtime stories, drawing her children closer instead of pushing them away. Tommy and Lily began to see the world through their mother's eyes, inspiring them to embrace their creativity. The combination of setups with her children snuggled next to her as she penned stories and received emails from readers moved by her work brought a warmth to her heart that she had long desired. Her children were not just witnesses of her success, they became part of the foundation upon which she built her narrative. Finally, one evening, as the sun set over the landscape, she took a moment to reflect. She stood before her favorite spot, where she watched the world outside shift, ever so slightly where shadows danced. In anticipation of the next day's promise. Here, she realized the splendor of her journey. Sarah felt solid confidence in her writing and recognized competence in the narrative that paired her identity with her ambitions. She stood not just as a single mother with aspirations but as a documented storyteller ready to conquer the world, spark the hearts of others, and touch lives through her words. With clarity, conviction, and a profound sense of achievement, Sarah understood what it meant to pursue one's dreams without losing oneself in the chaos. She had forged her path and claimed her identity, blossoming into a beacon of hope and inspiration for those who dared to dream. And with that, she embraced the unfolding journey with open arms. Hers was a story of transformation, poised to inspire many others. Now, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support for impactful narratives. Comment your reactions and theories about Sarah's incredible journey. We want to hear from you. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion and embrace their own transformations. Don't wait even one more second to support the channel, because true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the power of connection.